Chapter 112 Wall. Summary. Mina reaches the edge of the forest and comes face to face with the thing keeping her in. Ambling is how Mina would best describe the group's pace. They plodded along the forest as if on a leisurely walk, as opposed to literally hunting her for sport. They dipped around patches of thick brambles, spent extra time finding gentle slopes down when faced with near sheer rocky drops, even when it was only a couple of meters, and generally moved without any real urgency. Mina wasn't sure whether to feel relieved they didn't seem to be taking this seriously or offended. It didn't really matter in the end, though. All that mattered was with each dragging minute, they got closer and closer to the edge of the forest. And when they finally arrived, it wasn't hard to notice. The trees abruptly stop, leaving way to a strip of empty, grassless dirt. Well before they reach the edge, Mina can spot the dull metal wall stretching on and on in either direction. It reaches all the way up to the painted blue ceiling, and looks as though it's buried at least a few feet in the ground. When the hunting party crosses the forest's edge, Mina stays put, ducking towards the large teal leaves of a plant. When her sleeve brushes against a drooping leaf, a faint glow blushes teal against her cream shirt. Freezing, she glances towards the group, making their way along the gap between the trees and wall. No one's looking towards her to notice the faint light, though Irvlin's knife seems to have gone still in their hand, and their head is tilted ever so slightly towards the tree line. She dares not breathe until the group saunters into the gap in the trees, a ways down from her. Even then, she waits another minute before stepping away from the fern. Another wave of glow bathing her as she leaves for the wall. It's anxiety-inducing, being out in the open like this. The gap between the wall and the forest is a few seconds sprint. Not that she dares move too fast to risk drawing watchful eyes. The empty space goes on and on, wrapping around the bend with the wall off in the distance. Seeing the curve here truly brings to scale how big the place is. There's no way this is above ground. There'd be no room in the capital, and that has to be where she is, given the lack of general crumbliness. That, or she'd been shipped off outside the range of the massive earthquake, which is a possibility she doesn't even want to think about right now. Coolness spreads to her fingers as she runs them along the wall. She can't tell how thick it is, but she can only hope they just skimped out here. While she's not an expert or anything, Mina knows that some metals, like stainless steel, are more resistant to her quirk than things she tends to use it on. Not that she'd let that stop her in the past, but being able to wrap her hand around metal bars makes things a lot easier than a flat wall. Thick gray acid pools in her hands, ready to start eating away at the metal. But just as she moves forward to press the liquid against it, a shout sounds from behind her. "Aha! You were right, Irvlin! It is here!" Wursel shouts gleefully as he bursts from the tree line only a few dozen meters down the gap. Her heart stutters in her chest, and she doesn't waste a moment before pressing her acid-coated hands against the metal wall. "You fucking idiot!" Irvlin snaps. "You couldn't have waited until we surrounded her?" There's no hiss of matter being eaten away by her quirk, the liquid just pooling on the dirt with a gurgle. "But it was trying to melt the wall!" Wursel insists, voice closer than before. Running footsteps grow louder. "And we all know it'll take hours to melt through," the spear axe-wielding alien calmly explained. "Patience would do you good next time." No, why isn't it working? Tearing wild eyes away from the barely discolored wall, Mina sees the aliens have gotten far too close for comfort. They're seconds away. She can't stay like this. She needs to run or fight, but she needs to do it now. She wants to fight, Her heart is pounding so hard she can feel it in her ears. She wants to make it stop. Metal weapons glint in the same dull sheen as the wall. The metal net jingles as the two holding it try to maneuver it into their grips to throw. No, she can't get caught in that. She just can't. The thought of it plunges her heart into ice water. With half a longing glance at the wall separating her from freedom, from her family, she turns tail and bolts for the trees. It'll be harder to throw anything at her with the trees or bushes or steep slopes blocking them at every step. The previous pace they'd taken the forest with is long gone, the group tearing after her with frightening speed. Their thin figures and long strides keep them right on her tail, even as she pushes herself faster and faster, her lungs burning after only a minute or two. She can't keep this up. She'll tire herself out at this pace, and then she's dead. She has to stand her ground and fight. The forest's natural barriers should keep her safe from the net long enough for her to take out the two wielding it. She'll be fine. Casting her gaze ahead, she spots a spatter of trees grouped closely together. Running into the cluster with ease, taking the deepest breath she can force down, she twists her body back towards her pursuers. Neutral acid from her feet smoothly slows her descent, though it does nothing for her worn socks. Wurzel's grin instantly makes way for blatant terror as she faces them, but she pays the novice no mind. The two carrying the net look surprised when her foot flies out towards one's head. She doesn't bother holding back against her fellow Deathworlders, the blow dropping the alien like a sack of bricks when it connects. The net falls from their hands, and before the other can get a hold of it alone, she jabs an elbow into their stomach. Gagging, they drop to the ground as well. A swish of air alerts her to duck, twisting out of the way just in time to miss the swing of the long axe-like weapon. Mina lets loose a swipe of acid in retaliation, but the woman almost seems to expect this. Almost, as while she moves to dodge the flying liquid with a practiced ease. Her eyes widen with slight surprise, flicking between her eyes and her hands where the acid had been flung. "Take this!" Wurzel shouts, lunging at her with his knife. She easily sidesteps his blow, grabbing his wrist with an acid-coated hand as he passes and squeezing. He drops the knife with a cry of pain, and she lets go as another blade rushes her way. Irvlin is much more competent, striking out with quick and precise blows, causing Mina to fall back onto the defensive. She once again longs for her own weapons, even just her own knives to strike back at with. Instead, she brings her hands together and shoots a jet of acid at the blade. The metal doesn't melt. Unfortunate, but not expected. But it does scatter the jet, sending a thin rainfall of acid back on the hunter. They flinch back in pain with a sharp hiss. Okay, that should be enough. That made at least 3 of them who wouldn't be getting back up and fighting anytime soon. The other 2 couldn't leave them there. They'd need medical attention sooner rather than later. They'd be distracted. She could get away. She kept the only uninjured alien in her sight as she turned to disappear into the forest. The woman's weapon was discarded on the ground. Instead, she was knelt down by Wurzel, spraying a bottle of something on his burned wrist. Perfect. Mina shot forward, pushing her aching body to take her away from here. A choked gasp of pain escaped her throat as a cold burning slices across her left arm. She feels skin split, but she doesn't have time to look back as her legs carry her out and away from here.